Thank you for joining us today. I'm Abby Newhouse, the Communications Director at Wingspan Transitions. I have 15 years of industry experience. I've filled many administrative responsibilities ranging from hygiene coordinating to practice management. And I met our host, Charmin Long Oliveras, in 2008. In fact, she's responsible for changing the trajectory of my career into dentistry. And she's just been so influential in my life, as well as many other dentists, and really increased their profitability. I know you have so much advice to give today. I'm excited. Sherman, you've dedicated 30 years to the dental field. Will you share about yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The dental field has been a journey for me also. I'm like you, we all start in one capacity and it just keeps evolving. And I've thoroughly enjoyed every aspect of the dental field I've participated in. I started very young. I'd be in the dental field as an assistant, became a hygienist by the time I was 19. By my early 20s, I became a coaching consultant. And then, like 15 years ago, I got into the brokering space. And it's just been another wonderful just progression of my career. And it allows me to serve dentists in a capacity that I enjoy. And, serving dentists and creating win-win relationships is basically the way I've built my career and how I've established all of my amazing relationships that I have in dentistry. So here we are, and just this is another opportunity to introduce ourselves and the company to more and more dentists.
Thank you so much, Sharman. I know how much I've seen over the years how much you really have a passion for helping dentists. I know that's what really sets you apart as a person. What I've seen, you are in it to help dentists. Whatever you can do, give that knowledge that you have away, basically, and help them. So this webinar today is scheduled to focus on the navigating the practice transitions portion of your career. Whether you're considering an associate, a dentist that is considering an associate or selling their practice, we'll be discussing how to leverage their practice as an investment vehicle. Some of the topics that we'll be covering today are what sets Wingspan Transitions apart, how do the dentists know how much their practice is worth, when should they tell their team, when is the right time to sell or look at doing something planning for a transition. What if they already have a buyer? What do they do next? How do they make it legal? And Charmin, I know you've seen some common mistakes that a lot of dentists make, and how can they avoid these in their transition process? Charmin, start by telling us a little bit about Wingspan Transitions.
Well, we're very different. The logo and the way we promote ourselves is that we do we make transitions easy and we simplify things. And, coming from a coaching consulting background, I guess efficiency is a very important thing with me as well. So that's our goal, to make it as easy as possible. The biggest thing with us is that we do not charge any fees except if we sell the practice, there will be a commission involved. But there are no listing fees, there are no evaluation fees, there are no consultation fees. So I enjoy being a resource for dentists. I get a lot of calls, on a daily basis of, here's my situation, and this is where I'm at with my situation. Is it a good time for me to sell or not? I have a lot of people who call me because, many of them are convicted that it is the right time to sell, but some people are just trying to make that decision. And I like being that resource. And and oftentimes I just give them advice as to what they, because what if it isn't the right time to sell? If they don't have to sell now and they can plan this over the next 6 months to 6 years, well, let's stage this out where it's truly in their best interest and how to position themselves to create the best transition possible and get them the highest number for as far as a fair market value that the practice can obtain on the market. So another reason we're different is I have a vast network of dentists and buyers and sellers that trust me just because of my many years of serving the dental industry and all of the relationships I have created. We are partnered with leading industry specialists, various CPAs, attorneys, lenders, and bankers. We have our own real estate department, which is very efficient when it comes to having a dentist who has their facility building real estate to sell along with their practice. So Because of all that, we can do things very quickly. We have a very high success rate and have a lot of happy sellers and buyers.
I know that I love when dentists pick up the phone and just give us a call. They may not know exactly what they're looking for just yet. They just know they're ready for some type of change. And so, one thing I appreciate with working with you, Charmin, is your philosophy that you've taught me of simply just being a resource for dentists, a place that they can trust to call and ask those questions. I've seen firsthand the years of passion that you've dedicated to helping dentists and often walking them through how to get the most out of their practice. Again, whether they're looking to grow or they kind of say, I don't want to work 5 days a week anymore. I want to cut back a little bit. How can I do that and still um, set up the legacy that I want to set up for exceptional care to the future for another dentist? So today, as we focus on practice transitions, what are some pieces of advice that you would want dentists to take away and do you want to share with them today?
Well, the number one thing I think everyone needs to understand is the market is different now than it has been in the past. And by that, I mean I don't want dentists to get undervalued. I don't want them to be undersold. I want them to know what their practice is worth. And in the past 4 years, let's take the single dental practice. The way it has always been calculated when you use a single practice. Now, when you get into multiple practices, we get into EBITDA and we get into a lot of other things. But if we're just taking an example of a single doctor dental practice owned by a single dentist, we're going to take the last 2 years of collections and you're going to average that. And whatever that average is, 30 for the last 4 years, that number, we can get 85 to 100% of what that number is as a value on a practice, pretty much across the board. Now, it will vary some, and there are variables that cause it to be more towards the 85% range or more towards the 100% range. But in the last 4 years, things have massively changed in the industry, and things are selling between 85 and 100%, kind of across the board. Now, prior to that, the 30 years prior to that I participated in this industry, everything would always sell from 60 to 80%. So that is a major change when you're just looking at one single doctor, one single practice that needs to be sold. And I just want everyone to understand that. So the other thing is, the question you brought up, another thing I'd like to address is, and I guess before I go on to the team, is my point to the dentist is there's never been a time to sell like right now. And will this trend that we've seen for the last 4 years continue? We don't know. How long will it continue? Are we going to slip back to the way things were for the 30 years prior and things will be, undervalued again? I don't know. But now is the time, the last 4 years, this is the path we've been on and the kind of numbers we've been able to obtain through these transactions. So it's the best time. Now, I'll move on to when do I tell my team? Because that is a question we get a lot. And, I always say this, it's best not to do the extreme one way or the other. So by that, I mean, do not, it's best not to tell them in the very, very beginning, hey, I want to sell my practice, and hey, I'm involving a broker, and we're going to have buyers coming and going. It's not a good idea to tell them about the team tell the team about the transition in the beginning. But you also don't want to wait till the last day and go sign the documents that morning and walk in at lunchtime and say, oh, someone else owns the practice now, because that creates just it's a whiplash effect on the team. They're like, what just happened? And it's just, there are ways that this can be planned out and the message delivered better and to where they have time to get used to the idea. But the best time to do it, in my opinion, is when we have a buyer and they have their letter of intent signed, and now they're going to get all their lending lined up. When the lender has given us a commitment letter that here's the loan, here's the terms, this is what's going to happen, and now we're actually scheduling a closing date, there's usually a couple weeks period of time there. And that's a very safe time for the seller to go ahead and introduce the buyer to the team. And now we have 10 days, 2 weeks for everyone to get out to a very nice social lunch, to maybe go out to a dinner, to not only meet the new doctor and meet them outside the clinical setting, as well as meeting the new doctor, within the clinical setting. There's time to do both for the doctor that buys. So, when is the time for them to sell? Now that's up for the dentist to decide. I have a lot of dentists that call me and I walk them through it. And for some dentists, it's up to them. They're going to hear things in a 20, 30-minute conversation. If they can share with me a little bit about their practice, I can share with them whether I believe it's the best time for them to take it to market or not. And that's going to vary on a lot of different variables. And that's the nature of this business. There are a lot of variables that are going on here. I have dentists that there's a number of reasons. I got a call from one, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and he had a lot of debt, but the practice, he had only bought it 3 years ago, and it had backslid every year. And so it's backsliding, it's not growing, and he's got enormous debt. My advice to him was I gave him 3, 4, 5 pointers of what he needs to do in the practice and the kind of levels he needs to be at to try to get it turned around. And I just said, call me in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whenever you can accomplish these things and we get a trend of numbers going a different direction. And so that helped him. And I know I did this. Well, I do it quite often, but another phone call in November last year comes to mind. And she said, it's been a year since we've talked, but you told me to go do these 4 things. And I wrote them down. They're still on my desk. And she goes, I did them. And you're going to be impressed with how 2023 turned out. And I think you're going to tell me it's time now. And I was like, absolutely. By the time I got her numbers and I saw it, I was like, great job. It is time now. So, it just really depends. I had to tell a dentist he really needed to move his practice before it was a better time for him to sell. Based on things that were going on in his life and some opportunities he had, it was in his best interest to actually move his practice before he tried to sell it. So there's just no telling what the situation is. But I don't mind walking them through it and at least pointing them in a direction of this will put you in the best position to be able to sell your practice.
We're moving into the last segment of our chat today. We're going to open up the floor to any questions that may come up. Charmin, what are some common mistakes that you see when it comes to practice transitions? How can dentists avoid those?
Well, there's a few things I see, and a few things that, I'll tell them. They're like, what are some things I need to do? Something that seems very simple, but maybe they just haven't addressed it yet is if there's a lot of debt attached to the practice, I tell them if you can, the less you owe, or if you could get yourself out of debt, it's better. It's just going to be able to bring buyers of different kinds, more buyers with different possibilities on their lending situation from a finance standpoint. So, but it's not an option. Some people can't get it out of debt before it's time to sell. But if you can, please do. It just sometimes there are liens that are attached to it that are an entanglement, maybe from another practice that they've owned or another situation. So just get the entanglement of debt. The other thing is accounts receivables. I really ask people to, you know, go through your accounts receivables, get it cleaned up, because oftentimes the accounts receivable reports are incorrect anyway. But when you are making a decision to sell your practice, practices are sold with or without the accounts receivable included in the price. So that's something I have to walk them through. Are we going to include your accounts receivable? Are we not going to include it in the sale? And then of course offers come in one way or the other. So when the accounts receivable is excluded, it has a value. There is a value. This is money owed to the practice, but those numbers need to be accurate. And oftentimes accounts receivables reports are not accurate when I pull them, when I get them in my hands and start looking at things. So clean them up. Doctors, take a look at those with your office managers, with your operations managers, go through them from time to time and make sure that everything is truly accurate. There's a big problem. Sometimes insurance checks are posted, but it's really as intricate as maybe a little checkbox on that particular software that if you don't check that, it actually doesn't reconcile it exactly right. And therefore it still overinflates the receivables. You may find it's just a technical clerical error like that. But then again, you may have a lot of credits you need to deal with. You may have, there's a lot of things. So get the accounts receivable number accurate. You've got time to do it. Even when they list with me, it's going to take me, 2 to 6 weeks on average to find a buyer. They have time to address this, but just get it up to par. Make sure the accounts receivable is clean. Is what I would tell all of them. Another thing is it's become it's become kind of what I call dangerous to bring in the potential new doctor that might buy the practice, bring them in, integrate them as an associate, have them meet the team, have them work on the patients, and to go through this process for six months to 2 years, and then have them buy. It's become quite dangerous because a lot of times these relationships do not work out. And now that doctor will leave after they've learned your entire business, everything that has made you successful. They've gotten to know your team, they know your patients. And now, what was the non-compete like? How far away were they? Were they even on a contract? A lot of times I find that these associates and potential people coming in aren't even on contracts. So it just becomes messy and dangerous. And if you're thinking about, hey, I might want another doctor in here because I need some free time. Hey, I might want the burden of the business off my back. Hey, it's getting close to retirement. The better option for you to come out ahead and get fair market value for everything you have worked for, everything you've built, your legacy, the patient base that now trust you. For you to come out with the highest fair market value, the best thing to do is just put it on the market and sell it 100%. And when you want to introduce that other doctor, because when that other doctor comes in, now, I'm going to make sure everybody goes through a process where they actually get to know each other, the buyers and the sellers. And now whoever's purchasing it, you can turn around and work for them. Whether it's a private buyer that buys it, whether it's a DSO or a private equity group, we do all of these sales, probably, you know, we do all these sales. I have a huge database of buyers in the DSO private equity world, as well as private buyers. So, but my point is, you can often just turn around and go to work for the person who buys it, and that can be part of the arrangement. And, I have sellers that do that quite often. They're like, hey, whoever buys it, the large group or the individual doctor, I want to work for them 1 day a week. I want to work for them 4 days a week, whatever. The seller kind of gets to decide. And that's where, me as a broker, I'm going to listen to that seller and find them the buyer that wants to meet their needs. Because the seller is the one that it's their legacy, it's everything. And for them to trust someone, but I take them through a process where they really get to know each other. So by the time it actually transacts, then you actually know who you're actually going to work for, because contracts can be developed for you just to work for them and participate as much as you want in that practice. But doing it this way, you don't have the dangerous walk of someone else coming in your business and maybe it's not worth as much later because of some damage that occurred by having them there in the first place. Hopefully that makes sense.
All of that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much, Charmin. We've covered a lot of valuable insights today. So I think that we're coming up to one of the best parts, in my opinion, and that's when we give out your personal cell phone number. It's because, again, you want to build those relationships with dentists. You want to be a resource and help them. I've seen that passion that you have. So if everyone will just kind of get out their cell phones, we're going to program in her number. So when you do have questions, you'll have a resource to ask. So we're also offering free consultations and valuations. So if that's something you want to take advantage of and get scheduled for, you're welcome to give me a call, or Charmin. We'll be happy to get you set up. It'll cost you nothing. So as promised, the number is area code 469 928 3750. I'm going to say that one more time. It's 469 928 3740. Good talking to you, Charmin, as always.
Always good talking to everyone. Y'all take care.